Thank you, Mo. That was amazing. Two of the goals we have for this event is to run a God-honoring event and also encourage anybody that comes to take one step closer to Jesus. And I think she helped us do that today, so thank you for that. I don't want to be redundant on the video or Mo's testimony on what FCA is, but I do want to give you a little bit of the snapshot because as I'm Nate Sallee, the area director, I'm a little bit of how we're going about this and what God's doing right here in Northern Kentucky. One of my favorite quotes of all time is from Billy Graham, and it says, "One coach will impact more people in 1 year than the average person will in a lifetime." And that's been true in my life. My father was a coach, and some of the coaches that I've had along the way. And that's kind of FCA's emphasis, is to minister to the coach and then through the coach. So to the coach, their marriage, their heart, their family, their team, their staff, and then the ripple effects for the community are they're just going to happen almost naturally. And we're going to do that through just basically obeying the Great Commission to engage, equip, and empower. That's our translation. That's FCA's language on to make disciples, to engage, equip, and empower. How we do that? Pretty simple. 1 Thessalonians 2:8 talks about not only were we excited to share the gospel with you, but our lives as well. So we know that we need to meet coaches right where they're at. We do that through content, resources, events, personal contacts and visits at somebody's planning meeting at a school, whatever that may be. We even have a podcast so they can listen to us, get some good content while they're mowing the yard or running or whatever, meet where they're at. One of my favorite events is, as far as to the coach, is our coach and spouse marriage retreat. So this was a couple of years ago, and we just get incredible feedback every single year. And one of the reasons is just the need for the emphasis on a marriage and in the coaching life. Sometimes you'll talk to coaches and it's been 2, 3, 4 years since they've had a date night with their spouse. So we create this time where it's a turnkey event. It's a 24-hour deal, and we pour into their marriage, and they leave. Every time we have a coach couple share what their experience was, and one of the, just a quick testimony just to read from a local coach here, actually from Dixie Heights. There was a text after attending this event. He said, "Hi Nate, just wanted to tell you, my wife and I had an amazing time this weekend. It was exactly what we needed to refocus and once again intentionally put our marriage first and grow together. We're absolutely recharged, energized, and couldn't think of a better way to spend a couple days. We enjoyed every minute. Truthfully, that was icing on the cake to be next to a fellow coach. We very much enjoyed their company as well, and talking with you and Caitlin this weekend. You guys are the best. Thanks again for all you do. Have a great week." And you get a text like that, and I know, seeing him weeks later, that they were doing some follow-up stuff, and they were still running after the Lord and growing in their marriage. And guys, we made it a no-brainer for them because of the generosity of you guys. That experience right there was $125 out of our budget. That was it. And just the impact that can have when we minister to coaches first. Then we equip. We want to come behind them and to equip, and a lot of times that happens through a coach's Bible study or a coach's huddle small group, or again, that one-on-one, meet them during planning period or whatever they're able to, and kind of pouring into them one-on-one, training them, and then connecting them to a local faith community, because we want to equip everybody to do it themselves. A couple of things we do. One of them is three-dimensional coaching, where it's not just the X's and O's, but their mind and their heart. Another, transformational leadership. We believe all transformation starts with personal transformation. The core, laying a foundation of faith. But ultimately, we want to empower coaches to, again, lead in their marriage and family, disciple their coaching staff, and transform their players, their families, and ultimately Northern Kentucky. Because we know that just the incredible influence of the hours that coaches spend, we don't want to let that happen without intentionality, because it doesn't automatically mean good things. Sport is an incredible vehicle for the gospel. We've seen that, but it can also be an incredible obstacle for the gospel as well. So sports don't automatically build good character. It's going to take faithful coaches being intentional to do that. And that's why we're here. And there's a whole lot of training that happens in schools, but they do not see it as a budget line item to pay for coaches to grow their coaching, because it doesn't, quote unquote, directly affect kids. So we're trying to meet a need that isn't met, and it isn't interpreted as being worthy of budget line items. This is a coaches commissioning we did recently at our FCA house near Northern Kentucky University. This is Marty Mayer here sending coaches that he has poured into, that we've poured into as a staff, and saying, hey, you have the ability, we pour it into you, you go and make disciples and be a light on your team and sending them, because a lot of times you don't have that. This is our leadership camp where we're sending college athletes, much like we were, my wife and I, we met at Morehead State at FCA, much like Mo was at LSU. We recruit them and train them to lead middle school and high school athletes and that sort of thing. Some other just snapshots of wins. Just baptisms recently. This was actually in our neighbor's pool, so we had to get creative at FCA sometimes. So we're pulling up baptisms, especially during COVID times. Some new sports. So this is what happens when, so Walton Verona down here to the right, that's through a coach. That's Clint Coleman, baseball coach, been serving faithfully for a decade. That's what happens when you go through the coach. Cooper High School, we've had several different coaches we poured into, and then they finally get, dude, we need to get this multi-sport, this school-wide thing, we want to spread the word. We got students ready, boom, like as soon as we launched, a lot of people, a lot of response there. Same thing at Ryle High School. When we had this foundation of 2 and through the coach, really awesome things happen. Again, more baptism, more cool stuff. One thing that this was just, I think that just happened last year, we had this house next to NKY, right next to the campus. We had just gotten funds to be able to buy it. It's right next to there, and we've been able to flip that, and the location is incredible next to all the athletic facilities, and we've been able to probably get in there and start serving people. So we've had outreach nights, one-on-ones, Bible studies, meetings, hangouts. They have a place to go. They have an alternate place to go. All the other options they have, we can provide that for them. A little worship matter there. For business people that want to see some numbers, are you actually moving the needle here? I'm slow to show these sometimes just because I deeply believe discipleship, we need to go deep with a few so that they'll multiply. We're not just trying to get a club every single place because we want depth as well. But just to see what God's done as a testament, we've gone from 14 in 2015 to 2019 and 20 was 35, and we're on pace to be up to 60 for 2021 and beyond. And same thing for equipped coaches. We've started out with 12. 71, and now we're on track for 140 by the end of this school year that we're pouring into, and that'll eventually be equipped and empowered to go out in that. So again, you can clap it up for that. And then it's going to take more boots on the ground. So ultimately, we have to get to a point where we have more staff, and the best way we can get there is recurring financial support. So some families that we have give $5 a month or $500 a month or an annual gift, whatever that is. We need recurring financial support to have these boots on the ground and make us available to be there. I can go on way more stories about just what being available can do and what God can do with that when we just bring Jesus into the mix. So again, the impact is community-wide, and we believe multi-generationally. And that's why, God can call me somewhere else, but I plan on dying with our family's mission being seeking the kingdom and serving the sports world. I don't know if it's going to be through, directly on staff at the FCA the rest of my life, but I believe that's what God's called our family to and a lot of our staff, and just grateful to be a part of what God's doing with that. So with that, I want to bring up Coach Rick Thompson. Rick is a football coach at Mount St. Joe University. Just have him share a little bit about Impact of FCA with him. So good up for Coach Thompson. Awesome. So just want to hear, just real briefly, what has kind of your time with FCA as far as to the coach, what does that look like for you?
Okay, for me, within the 3D coaching program, the opportunity to sit and be in a group with Marty Mayer, who's also my roommate in South Africa, a pretty cool thing. But Marty building into us, and for me, that looked like in a couple of areas that, I've got some former players in here who kind of know me, so I can't tell any stories that are bad. But I think one of the things that was very important to me is being intentional, all right, about being transformational. And one of the exercises that we did through 3D was sitting down and okay, at your obituary, okay, what would you think people would say about you? What would you want them to say about you? And it was very impactful on me, and that, I felt like I was blessed in having good people around me. Now I'm working for younger coaches and have the opportunity to build into them, and also to make sure that they understand the importance of being intentional about being transformational. It's very easy to become transactional in what we do. And I know there's enough examples in my past where I probably was down that road. But I think being built into through Marty has really taught me the importance of those two things, about being intentional, about being transformational.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. And as far as like through the coach, you know, we've partnered on some cool things as far as what's going on now at Mount St. Joe, kind of through you being equipped and kind of sent where you're at now.
Yeah, it's been awesome. We have a very fledgling FCA group over at Mount St. Joe, and I just kind of want to focus on one part of that, and that is my relationship with Marty. We did not have FCA, but we believed that we wanted to do a book study with our players. And so at that time, Brian Thompson released his book about 5 Marks of the Man. My wife was on Facebook one day, Jen Sperry, and said, hey, you get somebody to get you the books, all that kind of stuff. So basically I went to Marty with an ask, look, is there any way that you could get the 5 Marks of the Man so we can put it in our guys' hands and do a book study with our players? Within that group, there was one young man who was a transfer, Trevor Tom, who was a very big part of wanting to do more. We were going through a journey at church after that. We had amazing, impactful from the book itself. But Trevor expressed the desire to get something started on campus. And he and a couple other athletes had been part of FCA in their high schools. And so they, at the same token, word kind of came back to me that Sister Karen, who runs our campus ministry, was interested in having something on campus to engage our athletes and to involve them and just talk about Jesus on campus. And so through that, Marty was able to engage me with Matt Howe from across the river. And it's amazing when God starts working. He starts working really, really quickly. Doors were opened. Sister Karen was amazing to work with. My wife thinks I have 2 nuns as girlfriends as a result of that. Sister Karen and Sister Barbara at every one of our meetings as participants, not as leaders. Their heart for our kids is really amazing. One of our young men, Julius Fisher, who is one of my starters at linebacker. And when Jules came to us, he's very, very quiet, close-lipped. You could tell that there was some torture there. And so I've learned a little bit about Jules' upbringing. It was not a really, really good thing. Constantly being told you'll never be good enough, you'll never be anything, you'll never. It just really, really heartbreaking. But I also saw closeness with an aunt and uncle who basically raised him, as well as nieces and nephews. Well, fast forward from that, he and Julius was with Trevor. Trevor brought him along to get FCA started. I got to see Jules baptized in the Ohio River a year and a half ago, which was an amazing thing. But to see where Jules is now, he drove 2 hours this summer to forgive his stepfather. And Jules is, like I said, tight-lipped. Usually a conversation with Jules, how are things going? Yeah. What are you doing this week? Yeah, okay. I mean, there's not a whole lot of that. It's very, very intense, and at times it's worried some of his professors as to, is this guy wrapped a little too tight? But Jules told me that during that 2 hours, he goes, well, there are a lot of times I could have turned around, but I kept figuring, I think God wants me to do this. So he kept going. Point of the story, Jules got there, he forgave his stepfather. His stepfather apologized to him and told him he was sorry for the first time ever in Julius' life. Jules is now one of the leaders of our FCA on campus. He spoke this last week. Marty was able to use him to talk to some kids at Dayton High School the other day. His testimony is very powerful because I know that there are other kids who have been through the things he went through as a young person and never had to do that. So it's just amazing.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. I appreciate that. I'm going to bring one of our leaders, Chris Cornett, and then Maleah Alexander on just to share a little bit about kind of her experience. Let's give it up for Maleah and Chris.
Can you guys hear me? I'm going to just interview her and ask her some questions, so you don't need to hear me. So introduce yourself, tell us who you are, what you're about, what you do, your faith background, things like that.
Okay. Hey guys, my name is Maleah Alexander, and I'm a sophomore at Cooper High School. I'm 16 years old, and I play varsity basketball and soccer for Cooper, and I play for Kingshammer, ECNL club, and then a basketball team called Fusion. And just a little bit about my faith background is that I grew up in a Christian home with my lovely parents, Heather and Darin Alexander. And so obviously I've just grown up in an incredible home, just loving Jesus, just growing up, just, knowing scripture, just loving God. And so that's always been so important to me. You know, I've always felt that I needed to put my faith into action. And so I know your next question is how I got involved in FCA.
I was going to ask if you had any 90-yard goals.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Yeah,
Tell me about that, your FCA background.
Yeah, so, oh, sorry, I'm messing this up. What am I doing?
Doing great. So, I'll give you a picture, too. So, when the pandemic hit and we went virtual, I started an online group, and Maleah was extremely faithful to that. But not just faithful of showing up, but more prepared than the guy hosting it. So, I just saw this incredible leadership in her. And then we'll fast forward to the next couple questions I have. Is like, just tell me a little about how you got involved with FCA and what that whole journey's looked like. You know, how'd you hear about us, and then what was kind of the first step into FCA?
Yes, thanks for getting me back on track. But anyway, so yeah, so my parents were college leaders, and they, you know, are on the board. So obviously, like, I knew a lot about FCA, but you know, when I jumped into your group, that's when I really got involved, and I was just like, wow, like, what FCA is doing is super cool, and putting my faith into action, like, this is what God is calling me to do. And so with Chris's group, you know, meeting with athletes from around the region was just super, like, impactful on my life, because I'm seeing other leaders, and we need to have more leaders in our schools like this. And so through that group, I was invited to the FCA camp this summer, and so I remember texting all my friends. I was like, "Come on, like, let's go to FCA camp," and they're like, "No, we're all going to Young Life camp. Come to Young Life camp." And so I was like, you know, God, like, what should I do? Like, should I go with all my friends to Young Life, or should I go to FCA? And I really felt that God was calling me to go to FCA camp, and so. I remember I was going, and the only person that I knew was my brother that was going. But when I got there, I was nervous, but I was plugged into a huddle, and I was plugged in with a great leader and an incredible huddle, and we connected instantly. I mean, I still talk to that huddle even now, and the leader, I talk to her, we text all the time, but, you know, just the whole camp experience was just awesome. I mean, just being able to learn about leadership in and through the teams, and there were a couple sessions, and the one session was on evangelism and just sharing your faith, and the other one was Nate Sallee and his wife's about starting an FCA group and FCA huddle on your team, and so after almost like a day after camp,
You went on vacation.
okay, we won't talk about that. A week after, whatever. Anyway, I texted Chris and I was like, hey, like, I want to start an FCA huddle on my soccer team. I was in soccer season, and so I got together with Megan, and she partnered with me to help lead an FCA huddle on my soccer team, and there were about 8 to 10 girls coming a week after practice. We just meet, talk about life, talk about, you know, scripture, and I was already starting to see the impact in my teammates' lives on the field and, you know, in their life. And so, and then Meredith Heater, Miss Heater, and a teacher at Cooper put together a FCA multi-sport group at Cooper. And I was just like, yes, like, this is what I wanted to do from, like, the get-go, you know. And so I immediately jumped right in. I'm on the leadership council for that. And even one of my soccer teammates that was coming to the weekly huddles for just the soccer group decided to join the leadership as well. And I didn't even know that she would want to join the leadership anyway. But she was just like, hey, like, I've really wanted to also share my faith, but I've never felt like there was an opportunity for me to do that, and she now has an opportunity to share her faith and lead as well because of FCA and being on the leadership board. And so every other Wednesday, we're meeting with about 50 students from Cooper, and we have speakers coming in, and it's super duper awesome.
So Maleah, like she came to camp, comes back from camp, starts a huddle with her soccer team, 8 to 10 girls. We have an alumnus, Megan Kelter, gets to come, who's a leader at camp, leads that group. That instantly transforms into an all-sport huddle, 50 kids coming every other week. Wow. So we're seeing this impact happen. So what's next? Is it the world? Is it what's next?
Why not? Well, I definitely want to possibly start like a little huddle with my basketball team. Now I'm in basketball season right now. But just continuing to, put out FCA, and, I do want to play basketball or soccer in college. I haven't decided yet, and then eventually, leading an FCA group maybe in college or after college. I don't know, but, even just FCA and just my spiritual journey. I'm also a perfectionist. I've struggled with putting my worth in sports, and just learning how to be a leader on, the court and on the field has helped me spiritually, and vice versa. Learning how to be a spiritual leader has helped me on the court and on the field, and so, yeah.
Okay, super proud. Let's go give it up for her. I'm excited to what happens with you. Thank you very much. Darin Schmidt.
Hey, my name is Darin Schmidt, and I'm on the board over at FCA. Proud to serve as part of FCA, and Nate called me up a few weeks ago and said, hey, you mind asking some people for money? And I said, well, I've been doing that for 22 years as an investment advisor, so it should be pretty easy. I guess the first thing that came to mind recently for me, there was a series, if you're familiar with Crossroads, Brian Tome put on. It was called, he was preaching on heroes. And one of the things that really struck me when I was listening to the sermon was he quoted a fact. He said 0.08% of all high school football players will make the NFL. So think about that for a second, 0.08%. So that means 99.9% of all kids are going to have their dreams crushed, right? Who's reminding these kids that are in public school what their focus should be? I submit to you that FCA is filling that gap in connecting with coaches, players, by creating huddles in schools. They're going directly to the schools. They're really the only organization that I know that's going directly to the school. I was a part of a youth ministry for 10 years, and we rarely went to the school. We always held our events at the church, right? And so FCA is actually going into the school and impacting the lives of kids. And it's not just athletes, just so you know. I know a lot of times we're focused on athletes here, but the athletes attract the other kids, right? They're kind of the leaders or the centers of influence, right? And so they're attracting the other kids, and they're bringing other kids to these events, not just athletes. Kind of my experience with FCA came about a few years ago. My son Josh was moving from Calvary Christian, pretty solid Christian school here locally, to Beechwood Independent High School. And the first thing I said to him, I said, well, this is going to be a big change. There's no Christian philosophy there. And he said, yeah, I'm real nervous about that. He's like, I don't know how I'm going to fit in. And I said, let me reach out to FCA and see if there is a huddle there. And sure enough, they have a weekly huddle over at Beechwood. And I can't tell you how excited he was to be able to have a place to go that he felt like he was at home, with kids that kind of felt like they had similar goals and values that he did, that had the similar pressures of what's going on in the public schools and what's going on in society today. And so I felt really blessed with FCA with that. And so I reached out to Nate and said, hey, how can I help? How can I be a blessing? And so that's kind of how I got started down that path, helping my family. And then, Chris Cornett came along and helped me with some three-dimensional coaching. He took me through the three-dimensional coaching process. And it's a holistic approach, right? Mind, body, spirit. And so those programs positively impact every player's life, teaching them about their body, their mind, and how they're all equally important. Not just, sports, right, and then God. These kids, what FCA is really doing, and I want to emphasize this, is FCA is going in and saying, hey, Jesus and God are more important than your sport. If you put your sport up here, when you fail that 99.9% of kids are going to do, where are they going to be at, right? What's their mindset going to be? All right? Our job through FCA and what we're trying to do is say, hey, let's remember that God's the most important thing here, right? And then you can handle the failure, right? My stepdaughter, Lucy Trump, recently won the Miss Kentucky Volleyball Award. And she had something like 450 kills or something crazy for this season. And but her hitting percentage was a 296, I believe. So when she'd swing 10 times, she would fail 7 times to get a kill. She's a perfectionist, so you can imagine what that was like for her. So these kids are going to fail. But, at the end of the day, what takes you to the next level is when she wins the award and then she posts, hey, I give God all the glory. I feel honored to receive this. Guys, that's where we want to be with these kids that are in leadership positions. We want to say, hey, I want to give the glory to God. I'm thankful for being here. So today in the investment world, my clients always ask me, what's my return on investment, right? What am I getting for my dollars here? What am I donating? And I think Nate threw some statistics up. If you're a statistician and you want to look at how we're growing, I think it's important to remember that it's about relationship, and that's how we grow. But you're helping to support a ministry that's going directly into the schools with the message of Jesus to the kids, to the coaches, and we're supporting these kids in public schools. We're trying to shine a light where it's important, right? We're trying to go in and say, hey, it's not all about the sport. We understand that this is your goal. The world's telling you this. You need a scholarship, right? You need a full ride to Notre Dame, right? Well, guess what? What's more important than a full ride to Notre Dame? Getting to know Jesus, right? Sharing his love. As Mo sent the message, it's getting the gospel out to the other kids, to the world. Tim Tebow, after he lost in 2008 to Georgia, I don't know if you guys know Tim Tebow, he was at a news conference, and I don't know if you guys ever seen the famous news conference with Tim Tebow, but he said, he apologized. You got an athlete apologizing because he didn't go undefeated, right? And he said something, that still sticks with me today that I tell kids about. They went on to win the national championship in 2008, by the way, but they lost to Georgia. I believe they were 12-1. But he said there are three things you can control in life. One of those is attitude. One of those is effort, and the other is focus. And I can tell you, I know the staff and the people that work at FCA, and they are 100% have a focus and effort and attitude on changing the lives of kids in public schools and coaches and bringing kids to the gospel and saying, hey, Jesus is more important than your sport. When you get the pecking order right, your life will be right. Obviously, I can't walk away here without a quote from Proverbs on money. Proverbs 3:27 says, do not withhold good from those to whom it is due when it is in your power to act. I tell you today, obviously ministry doesn't work without money, doesn't work without volunteers, it doesn't work without people. And so there's a lot of good going on here. And so you have the power to act. You have the power to say, hey, I'd love to be a blessing and give to the ministry. We'd love to see you do that monthly. That helps us with our budgeting our bills and trying to grow. But however you can give today, whether it's you want to volunteer or money, we'd love for you to act. And with that, I don't know if I have a QR code to give you or, but Brian's got me, so thank you very much.
If someone at the table would take initiative to grab the manila envelope,